The Honda XL750 Transalp has been with us in the UK here since March 2023, and it's a bike that's been received very well by journalists and riders alike. It's competing in a very crowded and very competitive middleweight adventure bike market, so has it got what it takes to stand out in that crowd? First thing to talk about, I guess, is the price. You can buy this Transalp for £9,699 on the road, ready to go, which I think is a very good price in this marketplace. Sure, it is missing a few bits, and we'll touch on those throughout the review, but for this money, I think you get a very capable bike. The 755cc twin engine was first seen in the new Hornet, and there is no denying it's a little cracker, squeezing out 90 horsepower and 75 newton meters of torque. It is a lively engine which has been given a different tune to the Hornet. More on this in the riding section coming up. The Transalp weighs 208 kilograms ready to ride, which again is competitive in this sector, and combined with the 850mm seat height, it is a very manageable bike. I'm 5 foot 10 inches tall with a 32-inch inside leg and can flat foot the bike. Moving the bike around is pretty easy as well, as is slow speed manoeuvring. Out on the road it feels very nimble, but again I'll talk about that later whilst out on the bike. The one-piece seat has proven to be supportive and comfortable on long journeys, and there's a nice chunky handrail for the pillion here with a rack combined as well. This screen is non-adjustable and neither is the Shura suspension, but at this price that's not really surprising. However, I've found that this is quite an effective screen. I do get a little bit of wind noise, but in any of the helmets that I've tried, I've not had any real buffeting, so I think they've done a pretty good job with this. One thing that is surprising on this bike though is the use of tubed rims. Now I understand obviously with more off-road focused bikes the argument is that having tubes makes it better for you or easier for you to get out of tricky situations. If you tear the side of the tyre wall or ding the rim, if you're running tubes, then that can get you out of trouble if you're in the middle of nowhere. But for a bike which is predominantly going to be used on the road with a little bit of gravel such as this, I think tubeless wheels are a much better option. I would much prefer to carry a plug kit and a pump rather than sparing the tubes, a set of tyre irons, and have to take the wheel out to replace a puncture. Now it's interesting that on the Africa Twin models, both the standard one and the Adventure Sport now come with tubeless rims. I think the use of it on this bike is really just a cost-saving measure. One thing Honda always do well in my opinion is the display, and the one on this bike is no exception. Clear, easy to read and easy to operate. I like this TFT a lot. The bike has 5 riding modes in total, and the ABS can be switched off for off-road work if so desired. The display can be connected to a smartphone via the Honda RoadSync app, which offers turn-by-turn navigation, calls, music and messages. You can also customise the display with 4 different themes. Styling wise, whilst it's not a bike that sets my pulse racing, I do appreciate the classiness of it. I think it is a very clean looking bike. It's very well put together, which you'd expect from Honda, and it is growing on me the more I look at it and the more I use it. There are 3 colours available: this Ross White, which is my particular favourite, as well as matte ballistic black and iridium grey metallic. This particular bike is also fitted with a couple of Honda's accessory packs. The Adventure Pack adds crash bars and fog lights, and the Rally Pack brings handguards, skid plate, quick shifter and engine guards, as well as foot pegs. So that's enough of the spec sheet numbers. If you are interested in this bike, you would already know those numbers anyway. So let's get this out on the road for the important part and see how it rides.
So in this part of the video I intend to talk about the engine and the ride quality on everyday roads. So we're starting off with a sort of a bumpy country lane, and I'll start by talking about the engine. The engine is well known. I really enjoyed using this engine on the Hornet. Puts out a decent level of power. It hasn't got the mid-range grunt that something like the Suzuki 800DE has got, or the RE. If you roll the throttle on, it's more of a progressive linear delivery of power rather than a a bit of a sort of shove that you get from the Suzuki. Not a bad thing, it's just a different way of delivering the power. But it is a lively engine, very free revving. It really starts to sing above sort of 5,000, 5,500 revs. The motor really does sound beautiful, and it pushes you on quite nicely. I think Honda have done a really good job with this engine, and again for this kind of middleweight adventure bike you don't need any more than this at all. It's got a nice gentle throttle, it's not snatchy at all. The ride-by-wire works really well on this bike. I've got no issues with this. This is what I'm going to have a lot to deal with today. Fully Gore-Texed up. We've had so much rain, and it just runs off the fields, and everywhere either gets covered in crap like this or is underwater. Maybe not showing the bike at its absolute best in terms of road holding and performance, but this is where you want it to kind of work for you. And I have to say, it's really easy to ride, very neutral. I know exactly what's coming back from it through the tyres and the suspension. Suspension is a little bit bouncy. Well, bouncy is probably unfair. It could do with a little bit of better damping, but this is where you see the sort of the budget end. I don't have any problems with it. I've found it comfortable on long journeys. I've found it comfortable on stuff like this. It's just damped as you would expect a sub £10,000 bike to be damped. But in terms of riding, it's predictable. It's got Metzeler Crew streets on it, which are not too bad. I'm a little bit wary of them on the sides in the wet. I've had a couple of little kind of wobbles on them when I've been pushing it harder, but as an everyday tyre, they're a good all-round sort of mixed tyre for this type of bike. They'll get you by on gravel, and they work well on tarmac. Mud, no thank you very much, which is probably why I won't be off-roading this in this review. Mainly, as you can see, if you see what the state of the roads are, I've been and walked down a couple of the local byways. I haven't got a lot near me, but the ones that I've ridden down are either underwater, completely underwater, or the mud is just so thick, and this bike with these tyres are just not going to work. So we'll have to save the off-roading for another video perhaps. But yeah, in terms of handling and engine power, nice and smooth, got plenty of punch, really predictable handling. It feels nice and light. The riding position is good, seat is comfortable, the foot pegs don't leave too much of a bend in your knee. In terms of creature comforts, well, there isn't very much. I've got my thick rucker gloves on because there are no heated grips on this. There's no 12-volt power supply. I think there might be a USB port under the seat, but other than that, it is a pretty straightforward back to basics bike. The clock is nice. I like that same clock used on the Hornet. Nice and clear, typical Honda. Very easy to see what's going on with it. If I want to use the spot lamps, function button is there. I can just turn them off and on with a up and down like that. Even if I had the heated grips fitted, that would work through that function button as well. It is simple, it's easy, it's clean, it's uncluttered. I actually do like this bike quite a lot. Around town, nice and relaxed, very easy to manoeuvre, very confidence inspiring. I think if you're delving into your first big bike and you want an adventure bike, this is a really nice one to go for. Pretty tricky conditions today, but glad I got my Gore-Tex gear on. I think this is a very good middleweight adventure bike. It's fun to ride, it's easy to ride, it's comfortable, it's quick. You know, it hasn't got a lot of stuff on it, but then that gives you the opportunity to add the bits that you want. The one thing that really always bugs me about Hondas is there's a lack of 12 volts of power supply here. Now I know that you don't use that very often, so for example, heated gear, if you wear that, if you don't want to wire it into the bike, quite often that runs off a cigarette plug, so having one of these is useful. It doesn't come as standard on this bike, and you could say, well, at £9,700 that's kind of to be expected. But then if you look at the Honda accessory catalogue, one of those I think is £24.95 from Honda, and you kind of think 25 quid, just shove it on the bike, bingo bango bongo. Okay, so let's have a little quick look around it. Admittedly, it is going to be wet and muddy and horrible. That looks like an adventure bike, doesn't it? Yeah, it's growing on me. The more I look at it, the more I like it. I think once you get the crash bars on and the bash plate and all that sort of stuff, it certainly has a bit more of a presence to it. Maybe it's the headlight being the same as a Hornet. Yeah, I think the proportions are good. It looks slick. I think looks pretty purposeful. This is definitely the best colour. There's not a lot to dislike about it. The other thing I quite like about this is that exhaust is lower. You could argue that for water crossings and bits and pieces, you could want that up here. But having that down there, if you want to run luggage, you can get the luggage in much more narrow than you can on the Africa Twin. One of the issues I have with the Africa Twin with the SW Motec side carriers on is it has to sit outside the exhaust, and then the pannier goes on from there, so it becomes really, really wide at the back. With these, and I've seen the SW Motec ones that clip on here, they can come right in, so you can get the weight further in, and obviously gives you that clearance for filtering and stuff like that. There you go. Right, so just give it a quick whiz up the road. So there we go, this is what it's like on the sort of smaller country roads, which is where I ride a lot. But I will go and do some motorway or dual carriageway work just to talk to you about what it's like at higher speeds.
At motorway speeds, it's actually pretty calm on the bike. I am getting a little bit of wind noise on the helmet, but only a little bit. I'm 5'10", as I said, so this will depend on your height and what helmet you're wearing, etc. But having tried a couple of different helmets on this bike, I was not getting any buffeting. Wind noise, yes. Buffeting, no. This screen performed much better than I expected it to. The bike itself is very stable, and it is a machine that feels very planted at motorway speeds. I haven't spoken about it yet, but the other thing that is missing from this bike, which may be a big thing for some people, is cruise control. It doesn't come as standard, and it's not on the options list either. Now that could be an absolute deal breaker for some people. I know from the comments I see on other videos that people just won't consider a bike that doesn't have it. Personally, I'm not that worried about it. I hardly ever use it, even on long motorway trips, so it wouldn't stop me from buying this bike, but I can completely understand those that feel miffed, for want of a better expression, that it's not available. So there you have it. What are my final thoughts? Well, I think this bike is definitely a strong competitor in that middleweight adventure bike market. If you take into account its price, its performance, its weight, its ease of handling, and just ease of ride, then I think this is a bike that's very difficult to go wrong with. The Transalp does a bit of everything, and all in all, it is a very classy machine, particularly when you consider that this can be bought for less than £10,000. It's a well-mannered bike, which the more you ride, the more you enjoy. Yes, it has got a few things missing. The suspension isn't adjustable. There's little niggly things like the 12-volt power supply not coming as standard, and obviously the tube tyres could put a lot of people off as well. But when you can take all of that into consideration, if you're after a middleweight adventure bike, I think this is definitely one to test ride in amongst the others that you've got on your list. So I hope you found that useful. If you have got any questions, leave those in the comment section and down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And all that leaves me to say is until next time, thanks for watching, take care, ride safe, and I'm going to go home before it snows again. See you later. Bye.